Verse 3. That which is known with no means of knowledge shines always as the effulgence of pure consciousness. All the dreams that well up within one consciousness have being only as functional modes of the very same consciousness. So is the case with everything. Hello, welcome back to Arivu, the poem written by Sri Narayana Guru, which translated means consciousness, knowledge. We are well on our way now, having done 2 verses of the poem, and there are 13 more verses to go, so 15 podcasts in this series. These 15 verses are a gift and an opportunity to look at the meaning of Arivu, knowledge from different angles. So looking at it from an angles perspective, I'm reminded of the time we did a trekking holiday in Snowdonia. Snowdon is the highest mountain in Wales and England, and there are 6 different paths to conquer the 3,560 feet giant. If we imagine we're trekking through the vegetation, and I follow one route, and each of you take a different route and subroutes and subroutes and subroutes and so on, we each will see different scene, experience different meaning, as is this journey of understanding Arivu, knowledge. In this verse, we are going to look at Arivu through one path, remembering that you and I have our own sense perception, which will dictate how we travel. And this sense perception cannot be measured and is as varied and infinite in its variations. That golden thread of sense perception is the knower knowing itself, and hence the reason why it is varied, because it is ultimately zero, the undefinable one reality. If we can hold on to that golden thread as we climb the Snowdon, we will arrive at the top from different angles. One aspect of this verse is to trust our knowledge within, not the knowledge acquired externally through the senses, but by folding the senses inwards, and therein will be the treasure, the self-luminous consciousness. Another aspect of this verse is the invitation to look at our dreams. Yesterday, I watched a documentary on Netflix called The Octopus, My Teacher. I was mesmerized by the beauty of the relationship between the octopus and the diver. The images of the life under the sea were beautiful. That night I had a dream that I was swimming with the turtles. After I woke, I still felt a connection to the sea and was happy. So in my dream, I had taken bits of the images of the sea, changed the octopus to a turtle, and I placed myself in the deep sea. All this had happened in my mind, so the mind created the dream, and upon waking, I dismissed it as a dream. Similarly, the world around me feeds information through my sense of sight, touch, taste, sound, and smell, and I believe the senses. But what if, like our dreams, this world is also unreal? It is real in as far as it is a creation of the one reality, Sat, which presents itself as Chit, consciousness. For the consciousness to know of itself, it must create, and so you, me, the world, all that I see and do not see, know and do not know, imagine and unimaginable, are all creations of the one reality, which is consciousness. The poem that I'm going to read sums up this experience of the dream. Yesterday I swam with the turtles, and the emerald waters kissed my face, and my heart danced a beat. When I woke, I longed to be back in the arms of the sea. For sure the dream was real, I cried, and a wise owl came to me and whispered that it was a dream, and as a dream, so is this life and this world. Search not for the dream or the world, but the one reality, the one consciousness, which you will find in the emerald sea of truth, from whence you do not need to wake up. Guru Muni Prasad sums this verse 3 so beautifully when he says that we use a bushel to measure the grain and use our senses to measure the world. But both the bushel and the senses are of one because they are the creation of the consciousness. So there is no bushel to measure the consciousness. It cannot be proven. It is not the knowledge of intelligence, but one where each of us must become the bushel and merge with it to know of the consciousness. I hope you enjoy this amazing verse 3 of Arivu, consciousness, knowledge, along with the wonderful explanations given by Guru Muni Prasad in his book of shorter philosophical poems of Narayana Guru. Verse 3. That which is known with no means of knowledge shines always as the effulgence of pure consciousness. All the dreams that well up within one consciousness have being only as functional modes of the very same consciousness. So is the case with everything. Here's an expansion given in the book of the verse 3. There exists a knowledge that we gain without help from any of the valid means of knowledge, pramanas, such as sense perception, inference, etc. It is the knower knowing himself or herself. We may also experience that it shines as pure effulgence. That means, as the objects known are really consciousness in essence, so is the knowing subject also consciousness in essence. The objects we see and enjoy or suffer in dreams become formulated in our consciousness, and they do not exist apart from that consciousness. The same is the nature of the existence of objects known and the knowing subject. Both emerge from consciousness, and both do not exist apart from consciousness. I'm now going to move on to the deeper explanations given in the book. We noticed in the first 2 verses that what happens as the objects of knowledge is nothing other than the one consciousness, which in turn is but the Atma of Vedanta. All objects become known to us when they are subjected to a sort of measuring up, with our act of knowing as a measuring rod, where our sense organs, mind, reasoning faculties, memories, value sense, and the like serve as aids. But the knowledge each of us has about ourselves is not so. It does not depend upon any such measuring rod or any aid. It is the event of the knower simply remaining aware of his or her conscious existence, a knowledge which we cannot define as the knowledge of so-and-so about such and such a thing with such and such a means of knowledge. In other words, it is simply the event of consciousness remaining self-luminous. But instead of directly experiencing the self-luminousness of oneself, or of consciousness, or of Atma, what we wrongly do in our ignorance is to make it also an idea, that is, of I knowing myself. To be short, what shines both as the object of knowledge and the subject of knowledge is nothing other than the self-luminous consciousness, or Atma alone. To see dreams is a human phenomenon. We're not quite sure about it in the case of other animals. What do we see in our dreams? Certain things, or events, or visions given shape to unconsciously by our own consciousness. All such visions are of living nature as well, and while they reflect our value notions in life, they also fulfill certain bodily and mental conditions or needs of the moment. No one would dare to claim that such dream visions have existence apart from the dreaming mind or consciousness. Who enjoys a sweet dream or gets frightened by nightmares? It is ourselves. To be more precise, it is our own consciousness. That means what appears as the objects perceived and the perceiving subjects in the case of all dreams is our own mind or consciousness. No dream vision, thus, is outside the range of consciousness. Neither is the perceiver of dreams so, nor the act of dreaming. The same is the case with our waking state also, the state in which we supposedly experience our life. It is in that state that we are aware of the existence of the visible world as well as of the mind that knows about it. Both are experiences, and thus are merely different conditioned functional modes assumed by one unconditioned consciousness. Both forms of awareness have no existence apart from the one causal consciousness. Seen thus, our life experiences as a whole are nothing more than a prolonged dream. Only upon waking up do we realize that what we are seeing till then was merely a dream. Until waking up, we wrongly think that what we are experiencing has real existence. When dreaming, we do not take these visions as dreams. Likewise, even as we are fully engrossed in our worldly affairs, we remain completely oblivious of the reality that all such are mere dream-like appearances emerging in consciousness. Instead, we think all those visions are real happenings, the idea which creates all problems. Our waking up from this prolonged dream is what we call attaining wisdom or self-realization. Only upon such awakening do we realize that the world we are counting as real until then was merely a dream. Then the problems which were tormenting us also will become part of that unreal dream. Such a new awakening should be our goal. Do we, in the usual course, create an idea of the world in our mind by consciously measuring it with the measuring rod of consciousness? No, we remain ignorant, even that any understanding we gain is a sort of measuring and evaluating. The only exception to this rule, as we've already seen, is the case of knowledge knowing itself. A heap of grains is measured by making use of a bushel. The size of the bushel decides how many bushels of grains we have measured out. The same is true with our knowing the world and ascertaining its meaning as well. The world and the phenomenon of life that forms part of it are measured usually by us and evaluated by us by making use of our faculties of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and feeling, and also of imagining, fancying, and logical reasoning. That means all such faculties together form the bushel for measuring the world in our case. The nature and value we perceive in the world depend upon the ideas and imaginations with which we conceive of it, using all these faculties for the measuring rod. With some, very insignificant matters are sufficient cause for them to commit suicide, either by consuming some poison, by hanging themselves, or resorting to some other means. Some others face all difficult situations with a calm mind. Nothing of the vagaries of the external world torments their inner peace. Though both these types of people get into contact with the same world and live in the same world, their visions of the world are much different. That means the standards with which both measure the world are different. There are certain standard measures or valid means of knowledge that our functional consciousness has itself devised, in order to ascertain the certainty or otherwise of what we know of the world as well as of life. Such standards in India are known as pramanas. No such means of knowledge helps us arrive at a certainty about the very consciousness that functionally devised such means in order to ascertain its own knowing faculty. Narayana Guru therefore says, in Atmopadesha Sadhagam verse 94, ineffable and unthinkable is this, infinite and unresolvable non-duality. How can any pramana be of any avail with regard to it? One could live with the enlightened awareness that all the experiences and knowledges we have of life and in our life have no reality other than as the incessant modes of expression or self-manifestation of the one ineffable and unthinkable reality or consciousness. On the contrary, one could also live one's life guided by the notion that everything we encounter, experience, and know are real in their own right. Two sets of people here perceive and evaluate one and the same world, and develop two different attitudes towards it, and arrive at two different conclusions about it. Which of these two perceptions is the right one? A difficult question indeed to answer, besides the fact that the nature and meaning of the existence of the world depend on the understanding and value perception of the perceiver. No absolute nature or meaning is definitely discernible to the human mind. The former is a relative concept of the world. What exists absolutely and is meaningful absolutely is one reality alone, the one unconditioned consciousness, not measurable with any pramana. That means everything measurable and perceptible is nothing but the relative aspects of the one absolute reality or consciousness that manifests itself by becoming conditioned in the form of various sense perceptions, ideas, imaginations, emotions, and the like, that is to say, by itself assuming various names and forms. It is this conditioned aspect of consciousness that makes the world appear to be an entity having a name and a form, or rather as an aggregate of all names and forms. These do not have being apart from the one consciousness. Put otherwise, all that we experience as the world and the worldly are merely dreams emerging in the one unconditioned and absolute consciousness. As we are well aware, the visions seen by a dreamer in his or her dreams are in a way an outcome of the creativity of his or her consciousness functioning with the actualization of happiness as the primary goal. The same is true with the unconditioned consciousness reality as well. It too is inherently creative. At no time does it remain inactive and thus never ceases emanating something new from itself. This creativity is called prakriti in Indian philosophy, kriti meaning activity with the prefix pra standing for proper, prakashana. Thus the word prakriti, though translated as nature, really means proper activity. Any activity will be absolutely proper only when it happens impelled by nothing else. This creative urge, having become self-actualized, is what we call the visible world. This creativity is also aimed at happiness. It is the happiness of perceiving its own infinite potentials. This means consciousness knows itself with no standard measure or pramana as an aid, and as a result of this self-expression of its own creative urge, the entire world appears to be to itself. Guru, in his Atmopadesha Sadhagam, portrays this picture as follows, answering the question, why does Atma or consciousness create the world from itself? So this is the verse number 33 from Atmabadesha Sathagam, and it goes like this. Pure consciousness, Atma, in order to actualize the potentials hidden within, transforms itself assuming the forms of various specific manifestations such as the earth, and moves spiraling up and down and back and forth, making many an apparent form emerge, like the glowing figures of a spiraling fire stick. Even when appearing as the world, it does not cease to be consciousness in essential content. What appears to be is the self-manifestation of the one consciousness. The entire world experience is thus the ever-changing various apparent facets of the one consciousness, as is pictorially depicted also in the Visarapa Darshana Yoga, the yoga of the vision of cosmic form of the Bhagavad Gita in its chapter 11. Nothing other than consciousness thus exists as real. This one consciousness is termed Chit in Sanskrit, and itself is the essential content of Brahman or Atman of Vedanta, often defined as Sat Chit Ananda, existence, consciousness, value, experience. As Sat, existence or reality, it appears as the existence of the visible world, subjective as well as objective. As Chit, consciousness, it manifests both as Vidya, true knowledge, and Avidya, untrue knowledge. As Ananda, value, experience, it becomes conditioned as happiness and suffering. Our attempt here is to know the consciousness, Chit, that serves always as the measuring rod for all knowledge. Why can't this consciousness also be measured out? For no reason other than that itself is the measuring rod. A bushel cannot be used to measure the bushel itself, but it does not mean that the bushel is non-existent. Likewise, though consciousness cannot be measured out by making use of itself, its self-luminousness is always the most direct of all our experiences. All other experiences we have this one Chit for their essential content. That brings us to the end of verse 3. Quite a long verse and explanations. I appreciate that. So I hope you've enjoyed that. And I'll be back here again, same place, for looking at verse 4. Until then, bye for now.